What makes Huawei popular? Well, it's very simple. The reason Huawei is so popular is you get a lot of bang for buck. You can go out and buy a very well-made smartphone or laptop, and for what you pay, you get very good specs. You can get a flagship style phone with fantastic cameras and it responds well, good processor, good amount of RAM, all that kind of stuff, and you pay less than the competing leading brands like Apple, for instance, or Samsung. And it's the same with the notebooks. You can go out and buy a very well-spec'd notebook that has an i5 or an i7 processor in it with a lot of RAM, etc. And the same Apple laptop that costs exactly the same priced Apple laptop, will have a much lower spec, less RAM, a weaker CPU, etc. So of course, why wouldn't you want to buy Huawei? It's cheaper, and especially nowadays, the products are actually very well built. I'm not going to lie, they are. They're fantastic. They're on the same level as, say, Samsung, for instance, or LG, or even Apple in some cases. But we're going to talk a little bit more about Huawei, and we're going to not talk so much about how good and cheap their products are, but more about why their products are cheaper than the competition and how they got there. So, I hope you are going to enjoy this little journey we're going to go down. We're going to talk a little bit about Huawei's history. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is a little incident that happened in 2003 with Cisco. Now, for those of you who don't know, I do actually have an IT background. I used to be a network administrator. I'm very familiar with Cisco routers and switches and stuff. And they used to be the biggest name out there. If you were setting up an enterprise network in an office or, for a company, you would have Cisco hardware. And everyone knew it as being like the top of the pops, the best brand you could get. So in 2003, what happened is Huawei copied the firmware, all the software that runs the router itself. Not only the firmware, but they also copied the instruction manuals of Cisco routers and implemented it in their own hardware. In fact, they copied it so well that they even copied known bugs in the software across from Cisco into their own routers, which of course was very easy to prove that they'd copied it now since the bugs were there. On top of that, they also copied typos that were in the instruction manuals into their own instruction manuals. And when confronted by this, they just brushed it off and said it was coincidence. Of course, it's not coincidence. And as we found out later on, Huawei and Cisco kind of settled out of court. And what did Huawei do? Well, you're going to find out that Huawei operates very much like the Communist Party of China, the CCP, pretty much because it is a part of the CCP. What did they do? They blamed rogue engineers. So, throw your little engineers under the bus, but never allow the actual company or the top brass to take any flack or lose any face. Okay, so that was Cisco in 2003. In 2004, there was a very interesting thing that happened. There was this thing called I've got my notes here, let me double check. This is the difference when you're doing a live stream. You kind of have to take notes. Okay, it was the Supercom exhibit in 2004. There was a guy. The guy's name is Yibin Zhu. And basically, on the Wednesday when they shut everything down, so there's no one on the floor where they have all their exhibits, these conventions, they set up all their networking gear and stuff to show it off. It's like a trade show. So this guy, after hours, when everything was shut down, was walking around taking photographs of all the equipment, on the floor. But even worse is he opened up. There was a specific, very expensive piece of hardware. Actually opened it up and was taking photos of the circuit board inside. And people noticed this and told security. Security came and stopped him. And they actually went through what he had. And he had all sorts of notes which contained proprietary information from AT&T and a whole list of different companies that he was to target, basically, to go and look at, to obviously steal ideas. And, the funny part is that two products were singled out on his list. So there were two very important products that he'd singled out. One was the FNC FlashWave 4300, and the other one was Nortel's Optical Multi-Service Edge 6500. Now, photographs of his phone, of the device that he'd opened up and taken photos of the motherboard inside, that was one of the two devices. That was the FNC FlashWave 4300. So he already had the photos of that one, and he had a whole bunch of other proprietary information that he shouldn't have had, right? So they made him delete all his stuff. And his excuse, he made up these lame excuses that, it's his first time ever traveling to the US and he didn't know that you're not allowed to take photos, which is, of course, absolute nonsense. And this is why China very often gets a pass. These CCP-linked companies or just Chinese companies, they get this pass because, in the West, we're very forgiving usually of people from different cultures, and we always like, we understand, you don't understand the language, that's okay, give them a free pass. But that China actually uses that high trust society, they know how to take advantage of that, and they always like, I just broke the law here, but I didn't know, I can't speak the language, I've never been here before. Tried and true, they use it all the time. Anyway, those first two events were just the beginning. We have, and I don't want to bore us and go through a history lesson here because I've got tons and tons and tons of lawsuits that have been, put against Huawei in the past by Motorola, where, ex-staff members were giving all the Motorola, secret information to Huawei. And, of course, Nortel was hacked. Everyone knows that. And, unfortunately, the result of this is that the companies that put in all the innovation and actually created these certain devices were pushed out of the market by Huawei, who actually took their own devices and their own IP and built cheaper units and undercut the original inventors and the original designers of this equipment and forced them out of the market. So some of these big companies have actually gone bankrupt or closed down or cut down significantly, downsized, simply because Huawei stole their designs, their software, their IP, and then created something much cheaper. Because remember, if you do not need to spend money on R&D, you get to spend money on assembling things, setting up factories, buying components. So all those billions of dollars that are usually spent on developing a product, Huawei didn't have that overhead. That's what gave them this head start. Anyway, let me introduce you all to one of my favorite places in the world, which you can see now behind me. This is Huajianbei. Okay? Huajianbei is, many people call it the Silicon Valley of China. And this is in Shenzhen, the city that I lived in for 14 years. And this was just down the road from me. I would go there. And Huajianbei is like a wonderland for anyone who's interested in technology. You can go and get almost anything you want repaired there, but more importantly, you can go and buy component level stuff. I'm just going to pause it there on that little Huawei Honor store. You can go and buy anything electronic. So not only just chips and component level stuff, but you can go and buy all the gadgets and all that. I've made plenty of videos on my channel. In fact, I got videos where I went and bought an Oppo phone that I gave away to a subscriber, where I went and looked at all the different smartphones and things that you can find. You can look for that on my channel if you're so inclined. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is I would like us to look at the Huawei stores here. Okay, so this is some footage I took some time ago before I left China, of course. You've got Oppo, which is another big one. And here we can see a Huawei store. Now, Huawei doesn't just steal software and, hardware designs and that sort of thing. They also steal design language. Okay? The Huawei stores, and it's not only Huawei, of course, Xiaomi and other Chinese companies do this as well. We could definitely make a series out of this. But if you look at their stores, they're almost identical to Apple stores. Okay? So they steal the design language of the stores. And they also, the products themselves, steal the design language mainly from Apple, but other brands as well. And I know there are people out there who are going to say, well, you know what, smartphones kind of all look the same now. And yes, they do. I got various different smartphones that I could, line up here. And you could say, yeah, I mean, they're similar. They look like a black slab or a slab or whatever. That's fine. But when you start to see an exact copy where the ports are in the same place, the colors are exactly the same, the camera locations are exactly the same, that kind of thing, then you can't bring that argument out there to say, oh, all smartphones kind of look the same, all smartphones use Sony sensors, etc. No, when they look exactly the same and they have almost the exact same name as well, you can't have that argument anymore. It's just a blatant knockoff and a blatant copy. So I'm going to fast forward past this footage I have here. Yes, let's see. Wow, isn't that a nice Apple store? No, wait, that's actually a Huawei store. That's the Huawei flagship store in Shanghai, which opened a while ago. You know, there's not much that can be said about that. It's just an exact copy. And look, it didn't go unnoticed. You got some people in the press, actually, on Twitter, etc., calling it out and saying, look, even the lights are exactly the same. It's an exact copy. They really don't try at all. They even have the Huawei flagship store in Shanghai knocks off the experience room. The same one at, the Apple French one. And they even copied the layout of the 1800s Parisian apartment Apple restored. Yeah, and this is recent, It's kind of ridiculous. So let's also just, we're on the same track here with design language. The laptops. Now, I actually do have footage of myself going into a Huawei store. I couldn't find it because, I got to mess with my hard drives. I'll find it and I'll post it on social media at some point. But when I went into the Huawei store, I couldn't believe just how blatant the copies are of MacBooks and of iPhones and what have you. You can't actually tell the difference. In fact, even the name, instead of being a MacBook, it's called a MateBook. It's really dumb. Okay, what can I say? It's blatant. It's out in the open. It's just blatant copy. So you got these MateBooks and stuff. It looks like you've walked into an Apple store. And you know what? They actually copy them pretty well. From a short distance, you cannot tell the difference between an Apple product and a Huawei product, especially the laptops. It's just blatantly ridiculous. And I love this. They got a new one called not that new, but they've got a line called the MagicBook Pro. Just like a MacBook Pro. So they got the MateBook and they got the MagicBook Pro. It's like, can you not come up with your own names? Can you not come up with your own designs, Huawei? Why do you have to steal everything? We know that you love stealing stuff and have been for years, but at least try, try a little bit. Why don't you take on some kind of Chinese design language? Why don't you incorporate Peking opera designs or something to do with China? I mean, that's just an idea. You don't have to, but, why not something different? Yeah, anyway, that's what it is. Look, Huawei's been caught out a lot. They've multiple times been caught out faking what their cameras can do as well, just like this 2018 article points out. Huawei was caught out using a pro camera to fake their smartphone photos again. And this was an Egyptian advertising campaign. And they got caught out because the actress posted on her Instagram. And let's see what she posted. Because this is supposed to be a selfie that you're seeing now behind me, taken on the Huawei, whatever, Mate 10 or 20 or whatever it is that they have at the time. And there is her Instagram post where you can see the photographer with what looks like a Canon 5D Mark III, with a professional lens taking the photo. So yeah, we're dealing with a company that's more or less just based on theft and deception. Yeah, here we have the Huawei Mate. Which one was it? This is there we go. This is from 2 years ago, so this will be the Mate 10 Pro or Mate 20 Pro. I don't keep up with the Huawei things, model numbers and stuff. But anyway, their flagship was a shameless iPhone X copy, which this reporter obviously showed in this by comparing the two. The camera location's exactly the same. The feel and look of the phone is exactly the same. And it's just frustrating, really, to see this kind of behavior by a big company. So here's another little fun thing Huawei did. Was before they released their Mate 10 Pro, is they had a little competition. And they asked people to write, they said, you could win one of these Huawei beta. You could be a beta tester for these new Huawei flagships. You just have to write down what your expectations are, and basically what you're looking forward to in the phone, what you like about the phone. And then what they did is they took all those entries into the competition and put them onto Best Buy websites as reviews, customer reviews. So there was like all these fake reviews, which were actually entrants into the competition. And well, you get the idea. Huawei is very used to using underhanded means and whatnot. So, why does this, why do these Western companies put up with this? This is my question. Like, why is it that all this theft has gone on for so long and no one's really made a huge stink about it? Well, it's the lure of the Chinese market. There are countless companies that have not formally complained because they want to enter the Chinese market. And as soon as Huawei starts to mess with them and steal their stuff, they know that if they complain and they make a big stink out of this, there's going to be a knee-jerk reaction that will bar them from the Chinese market. So it's greed, really, at the end of the day, because they want that piece of that pie. And this is how the CCP operates. And I'm going to constantly conflate the CCP with Huawei here because they are one and the same. And I'm going to give you some proof of that shortly. But the fact of the matter is, the CCP loves this whole fake carrot, real stick approach. So they offer you this fake carrot, which is you get to have a part of the Chinese market, this massive, lucrative market. You can come in here. So the company starts to invest a lot into China, getting into China because they want to get into China. But when it suits the CCP, they will bring out their stick and be like, okay, you still want a piece of this pie? You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do this. So the company will comply, censor itself, do whatever it is. And that stick's ready to whack. And guess what? Once that company's invested a lot in China, and the Chinese companies start to benefit from it. In other words, the joint ventures or what have you start to take the technology that's being brought into China and in fact take it away from the initial company and start OEMing it, start doing it themselves, start to build their own app or their own whatever it is. Then the CCP bans that company, whacks them with that real stick, and the fake carrot was never real in the first place. Anyway, that is why we've had this huge amount of theft with not a hell of a lot of stink. I'm going to read a little bit here with of some other stuff that I know about Huawei and just want to tell you. But back a couple of years ago, former Huawei staff revealed that they were briefed to recruit rival talent, but struggled initially. So they turned to scrutinizing network hardware of rivals. In Huawei's Stockholm office, the researchers stashed foreign-made equipment in an electronically secured basement. Some was shipped to China to be dissected by engineers. And the secretive chamber is not only in Stockholm, but even in Texas. This actually was brought up by US intelligence, was actually upset that Huawei had like a secure room in their offices, and it's electronically shielded. No one can, penetrate it with electronics or go in. And here's the part that really tickles me a little bit is Huawei had built spy-proof secure rooms in their Texas facility that were off limits to American employees. Okay. So, I mean, what is this? What is this spy espionage bollocks that American employers are not allowed? Imagine we have a company in China and they've got a room that's shielded off that's not accessible to Chinese employees. Just imagine how that would fly. Imagine you go and set up your thing there and it's like, oh, in China, Chinese people are not allowed to go into this room. It's just a bit much. Anyway, that's some of the things they've been up to. But now we have to move past the theft and IP stuff because we know it's blatant, it's out there. You can just look at Huawei products to know this. Yes, you're getting good bang for your buck, but remember, guys, you're buying something that's built on theft and lies and deceit. At the end of the day, it's what I'm trying to put through is there is a moral part to all of this. And when it comes to knockoffs, I am totally not innocent. I definitely have bought knockoffs in my life. And in fact, growing up in South Africa, there were sanctions against South Africa. And when I was a young boy, I couldn't get a Nintendo because no Nintendos were sold in South Africa. They weren't allowed to be sold due to sanctions put in place because of apartheid, right? So we ended up getting cheap Russian and Taiwanese and Chinese knockoffs of Nintendos, which were sold in the local stores. So I had a knockoff Nintendo and fake pirated Nintendo cartridges, there's like 101 type things and all those cheap rubbish Chinese knockoff cartridges and stuff. So, in that situation, there was no choice between buying an original or a knockoff. We only had the knockoffs available. So I know what it's like. And especially if you don't have the money to afford an Apple iPhone, you'd much rather support the underdog because you're getting your money's worth. But at the same time, there's that moral part of it, which you have to think about. The companies that have gone under because of this, and it goes beyond just competition and companies and who lost out monetarily. This goes into human rights, and this goes into a lot more, which is what we're going to address now. Huawei has been proven. I'm not making this stuff up, okay? Huawei has been proven to be linked to the CCP, and that's because, well, not only the fact that the members of the CEO and all of that stuff are, former Communist Party or current Communist Party members and stuff, but the CCP, it's been linked to the CCP because Huawei employs people that hold dual positions at both Huawei and also within the PLA Strategic Support Force, which is basically the department that oversees electronic warfare. So it's basically the electronic spy arm of the CCP. People that are still in the electronic spy arm of the CCP are currently employed by Huawei. And this is information that was easily gathered because the CVs of employees, the resumes of employees that work for Huawei were leaked a while ago, or just public information, and it's very easy to find out that a lot of people working for Huawei are either currently attached to the People's Liberation Army spy arm, or they used to work for the People's Liberation Army, especially in the electronics warfare side of things. So, they are linked in that way. But not only are they linked in that way, it's very obvious to tell that Huawei is a part of the CCP. And the reason is that whenever any country or anyone tries to attack Huawei in any way, and when I say attack, I mean call them out for their BS, put tariffs against them, or complain about their backdoors into their routers and so on, it's not Huawei that protests. It's the Chinese government that comes out and protests. It's the Chinese foreign minister that comes out and accuses other countries of, targeting Huawei or being bad towards Huawei, or bullying Huawei. It's always the CCP. It's not Huawei, it's the CCP. Because Huawei and the CCP are one and the same. Their interests are joined. It's all part of what they want. So, we have situations where we get all these threats and so on from the CCP whenever Huawei is kind of under the spotlight overseas. But also, my friend Michael, the two Michaels that got disappeared, Canadian Michaels in China. One of them is my friend, and I'm not going to say which one because I don't want to cause any more trouble than the poor guy's going through at the moment. But they have been falsely imprisoned as a retaliatory measure for Canada, basically arresting the Huawei CFO Meng, Princess Meng as they call her, because just like Huawei is always doing underhanded crap, Huawei was doing underhanded crap by bypassing sanctions against Iran, by selling Huawei equipment to Iran and lying to the banks in Hong Kong as to how the money was coming through and who the money was for and all this. So she got caught out, okay? And so they put out a warrant for her arrest in the US. And because of the treaty with the US and Canada, of course, she passed through Canada, which, by the way, she has mansions in Canada. She has a lot of assets in Canada. She goes to Canada all the time. She's got 7 passports, for crying out loud. This is not some poor little woman who doesn't know what she's doing. This is a very calculated and very, resource-heavy person that's going around the world doing all these different things. Anyway, she got caught out. Huawei got caught out. And so there needs to be a trial, right? So they arrested her because of her fraud and bullshit that she was doing. But of course, what happens? Huawei doesn't say, oh, this is terrible, this is awful. The CCP retaliates. The Chinese Communist Party, those horrible, dictators that that line of dictators stretching from Mao Zedong, who starved half the country to death, all the way up to now Xi Jinping, dictator for life, they're the ones that retaliated, not Huawei. And they went and just arbitrarily detained 2 Canadians that have got a semi-high profile, because they know that if they do that, they can pressure, at least they think they can, because that's how it works in China. It's all about some innocent person being detained, like your family members or something. Some innocent person that's attached to the person you really want to hurt. They take those guys into custody and they hold them as hostage, and they torture them, or they do whatever they have to do until you relent and you give up. And that's what they were hoping would happen. They were hoping that if they just detain these random Canadians, and they didn't even charge them for God knows how long, just detain them, then that'll put enough pressure on Canada to release Huawei Princess Meng. And you know what? They've even admitted it through their back and forth. If you look at the diplomatic stuff, they've admitted that it's related. It's not related. So once again, Huawei and the CCP are 100% in symbiosis. And look, not only that, the CCP has subsidized Huawei in the past too. There are lawsuits that have been tried to be raised against them. So that's another reason why Huawei can undercut the competition, is because the China's Communist Party is subsidizing them, giving them money. So they don't have as many overhead costs as the competition. It's easy to undercut your competition that way. So, we also have to remember that Huawei, like all other companies in China, absolutely must answer to the CCP. And of course, the CCP is proud of and supports Huawei, because any Chinese company that does well, especially internationally, it means success for the Chinese Communist Party, because the Chinese Communist Party has a complete hold over China and all the companies and all the revenue and everything that comes into China. It belongs to the Chinese Communist Party at the end of the day. So when they see success in a Chinese company, they love it and they support it 100%, and they subsidize them and they do whatever the hell else they can do. And of course, they block any competition within China too, to help Huawei and Xiaomi and all these kind of companies as well. So, I think I've presented more than enough proof that Huawei and the CCP are at least linked. And so what is the actual message of this video today, this Friday video? It's simple. Don't buy Huawei. They're a company that's based on theft, deception, and underhanded practices. And it reaches all the way into human rights. Because of Huawei, my friend is being detained in appalling conditions, while the Huawei Princess Meng gets to live under semi-house arrest in her millions and millions and millions of dollar mansion and still go out shopping for her LV bags whenever she wants to with her bodyguards. This is a human rights issue. Never mind the fact that Huawei is also a security risk and has been proven to be a security risk because of backdoors that were found in the firmware of their routers and switches, etc., and all their network equipment. And this is something I'm very familiar with. And they at first denied that those backdoors existed, and then later, when they were proven 100% that they were there, they then said, "Oh, but we need those in order to make sure that the equipment is, safe and we can support the equipment properly." It's all this nonsense. And remember, they have to listen to the CCP. So yeah, that's my message for today. It's time now for me to answer a couple questions from you guys. We're going to look at some questions and let's see where this goes. So, all right. We have Sean says, communists only know how to copy from capitalists. And look, it's 100% true, I have to say. If you look at modern China, there's nothing that modern China has invented. Anything that's look, China was fantastic. Okay, we all know that there's this massive history. And I'm not trying to get down on China. I'm trying to get down on the CCP and the way it operates. Because if you look at ancient China was far ahead of the rest of the world for a period. They supposedly invented the compass, the printing press, paper, and gunpowder. Okay, they didn't invent guns, but they made the powder at least. And we had this beautiful civilization that flourished back in the day. Everyone knows all the tea and silk and everything. But modern day China, Every single part of modern day China is a copy, including the Communist Party, which is just a copy of Karl Marx's nonsense communist crap, which, let's face it, Karl Marx is not Chinese, so they don't even have that. Everything in China, from the buildings to the roads to the railways to the technology to the electricity to the cars to the every single thing that you see is a copy or a derivative of some other nation's invention. And that's just the way it is. I've seen it with my own eyes, and I think we all know it's the truth. I'm not trying to take away from the real proper inventions that China has and the real culture that China has. Don't get me wrong, because there's a lot of beautiful stuff in Chinese culture. Dion Chapman, money for non-knockoff and non-fake beer. Thank you so much, my man. Thank you, Sneaky Yoster and Dennis Stafford. Okay. Miles Dolding. Why are they so averse to making unique products? It's not about being averse to making unique products. And this is the weird conundrum that China faces. Chinese people and engineers and scientists and so on are incredibly capable. I know some incredibly smart people in China. And I mean, it will blow your mind that they can do some incredible things. But they always have to be under direction, and they don't spontaneously come up with any creative ideas or anything like that. And that is, I believe, largely down to the education system. And the educational system in China is all about you listen to what the teacher says, repeat, repeat, repeat. It's not about coming up with your own ideas. It's not like in Western education where your teacher will say, all right, guys, make an essay. It could be about anything, anything to do with this topic. Go ahead. It's not like that. In China, it's more like read this ancient poem, memorize it, and then I'm going to ask you to write it down word for word type thing. It's all about the education, guys. Okay. Jan Foska. My best friend is working for Huawei Prague as a copywriter. Should I be concerned about him and his morals or something? I bought a Huawei phone in China for 1,000 RMB. Was the only brand I knew then. Yeah, look, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a moral thing. Your friend's working for Huawei. I don't know. I mean, I don't blame him for getting a job and to support his family and what have you. I mean, that's just what you do. And you know what? It's fine as long as he's not part of the theft ring, as long as he's not being told to go out and steal secrets of competitors and stuff. I think it's totally okay. As far as buying a cheap phone in China, I fully understand. And I mean, I've done the same. There was a long period in my life where I was supportive of this. And you can see it in my videos where I go out and I buy, cheap Chinese phones. But I never tried to buy things that were like blatant knockoffs, because there are tons of like fake iPhones and where it actually says iPhone on it and it's trying to be, it's totally fake. But when it comes to all the smaller brands like Huawei, Xiaomi, etc., I really liked the idea of bringing quality to the masses, so to speak, to the lower classes. And the first time I ever saw a Xiaomi phone was when I was on a bus and I was traveling with this guy. I think I might have footage of that actually, but I was traveling and this guy came to talk to me because he saw I was a foreigner, and this happens quite often, and he wanted to practice his English. And he just gotten the first low-cost Xiaomi phone that was ever released. And I was very impressed because it was a very cheap phone. It was something like 400 RMB or 300 RMB, but it had a great camera. It looked slick. It was very nice. In fact, I went out and bought Xiaomi shortly after that, and I gave it to a subscriber as well. And I'm in all like support of this. I really like that idea. But at the end of the day, you have to understand that when you've got a company, a massive company like Huawei, and you look at its dodgy past, you have to start drawing some lines there. It's like, okay, should we be supporting a company that is responsible for basically stealing and hurting other companies around the world, and of course then now human rights as well, and that a company that is so intimately tied in with the CCP? Every time we buy a Huawei product, we are in fact supporting what's going on with the Uyghur concentration camps. We are supporting the CCP's fishing flotillas that are destroying the oceans around the world. We are supporting this ridiculous Belt and Road Initiative. We're supporting all the carbon that's being released into the air. We are supporting the bad guys because we want a shiny phone that costs a couple $100 less than, another brand. That's what I'm trying to get at here. Let's see. Hi, Mr. Independent. I hope you and Manas Voy patched up. Sure. Of course we did. That was quite a while ago, that little thing. Ray Canuck, thank you. Howard Gleason, Mama's boy, a.k.a. Lawai. By the way, I'm joking. Yep. Well, I mean, he totally is a mama's boy, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's good to be close to your family. Okay, Mitchell Shipman. Do you think it's a matter of time before the CCP does something inexcusable that the Chinese people rise up? That's a tough one. I mean, don't forget the CCP was responsible for the deaths of millions and millions and millions of people. The CCP put the Chinese populace through the one-child policy with forced abortions. Okay, the CCP has put the Chinese people through some hell, and they've accepted it all this time. It's called Chiku, Xinku. It's just a part of Chinese history and culture where it's all about the Chinese people can endure hardship, I think is the correct translation for that. So it's tough to know. Okay, Philippe Gomez. My cousin actually works at Cisco Systems as a software engineer, and he told me Huawei copied their stuff as they used to assemble them in China. Yep. If any of you guys are car guys, do you know about Saleen Mustangs? You read up on that, how they got so screwed over by China because they wanted to get into the China market, and they went there and they did the joint venture thing, and it was all about building superchargers and stuff for the engines. And basically the Chinese partners stole all their designs, patented it themselves in China, and forced them out and stole all their stuff, and they got nothing. Read up about Saleen Mustangs in China. You'll see what that's all about. Okay, hey, been watching your videos about China. I think they're great. Thank you. It's a tough thing. I've spent so much of my life in China. I love China as the country. I love the Chinese people, but the CCP and these companies like Huawei that are just thieves and state-sponsored thieves that are given praise around the world, it just makes me kind of mad, All right. Janfusco, what's your favorite Chinese brand? Phone, car, beer. What phones do you use over the years in China? Did you drink hot water since yesterday? I hate drinking hot water. Yeah, look, as far as Chinese brands, without a doubt, the only one that I will support is DJI, which makes the drones that I use, because I think they're fantastic. And they're very innovative. Of course, the main designers and so on weren't Chinese, I'm afraid to say, but they hired some very good talent to do it. But their products are fantastic. And, we're past that point where we can say that Chinese companies only make cheap knockoffs. That's not true. You get some very good quality Chinese products these days. Like, seriously, I'm not pulling anyone's leg here. Like, really, really good. And I'll stand behind the quality of some Chinese brands. But unfortunately, a lot of those brands like Huawei and Xiaomi and so on are built upon theft and underhandedness and are linked into the CCP. And it's a worry because, even with the drones, they track everywhere you go and they have to talk to home base every time before you fly it. And so you have to worry about the fact that this company and this product that you're using is tied to this sort of horrible, leadership in China, who's just out to censor the world and, enforce their nonsense on everyone and kind of oppress and monitor everyone. So, that's the biggest worry. Long-time sub from Deathflash. Love and support from Texas. Can't wait to see that crazy adventure you'll go on those gyro scooters. Yeah, we've been discussing where we're going to go. We were thinking to ride from the border of Mexico to the border of Canada, but then we realized that's probably going to take too long. We also thought about driving them to the Grand Canyon, riding them to the Grand Canyon. And there are a couple of other things we've been thinking about, but we haven't decided on that just yet. And Grady Gillis, no question. Just a toss in the pot for help with the deductible for your recent organ donation procedure. If not needed for that, do something with those ridiculous scooters you two maniacs bought. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. So that looks like it from the super chats for today. I want to say thank you, everybody. And again, I want anyone who's even considering to buy a Huawei laptop or a Huawei phone just to think of the moral implications behind that, you know? Of course, there are things that could be said about, you know, Apple using, you know, cheap labor in China and taking advantage of certain things. We could say things about other companies. No company is innocent of crap, but Huawei is tied to the CCP. The Huawei debacle with Canada has resulted in one of my friends, somebody I know, being detained arbitrarily and kept in torturous conditions. Huawei is a spy arm for the CCP because they have to be, even if they don't want to be. Remember, don't buy Huawei. And until next time, you know the drill. As always, guys, stay awesome. And sorry, one more question from Sean said Miniware and Creality are also creative for makers. Oh yeah, okay, great. Well, like I said, you don't have to discount all Chinese products. I'm talking about Huawei here. And Michael Williams, last one. Can you really say China is stealing when American companies chose to deindustrialize and ship jobs to China, all to destroy unions and yeah, blah, blah, blah. I know this narrative. Yeah, look, you reap what you sow. I'm not American, so, you know, what can I say? If you're going to deal with China the bully, you have to realize what kind of a thing you're entering into. But also, at the same time, I don't think most companies realized the direction China was heading in when they first signed up for this. Because even myself and Sea-Milk, of course, realized through the years how China was taking a dark turn, because it was very bright and it was very cool. Under the leadership of Hu Jintao and previous, China was opening up. But now Xi Jinping wants to be Mao Zedong 2.0, and he's really going back to the old bad communist rhetoric and the old bad close China off, and it's China versus the rest of the world crap. And, you know, that's when things start to go bad. Anyway, guys, I really do have to head off. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for joining me today, and I can't wait to see you next week, where we'll have a regular video. So, until next time, you know the drill. As always, stay awesome. And stay awesome